High Admiral Vegsera stood motionless before the Confederation Council's curved display wall, her forearms clasped behind her back in the traditional pose of scientific presentation. The holographic images of Earth rotated slowly before the assembled dignitaries, a blue-white marble that seemed unremarkable among the countless worlds under Confederation protection. Preliminary scans indicate a Type 0.8 civilization, Vegsera reported, her voice carrying the distinctive harmonic overtones of the sylph species. They've barely managed to reach their own satellite, and their primary energy source remains the combustion of fossil fuels. The species calls themselves humans. The council chamber filled with the subtle vibrations that indicated amusement among the gathered representatives. Sub-Councillor Zixtani, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's soft light, spoke first. Another primitive world for the registry, then. Perhaps worthy of basic observation status. Vegsera's upper left hand twitched slightly, a gesture that, had any humans been present, they might have recognized as hesitation. There are anomalies in the data that warrant further discussion. The chamber fell silent. In the 10,000 cycles of Confederation history, anomalies had rarely meant anything positive. Their technological development is highly irregular. Vegsera continued, manipulating the display to show a timeline. Most species follow a predictable pattern: fire, agriculture, industry, atomic power, spaceflight. The humans, however, she highlighted several points on the timeline. They achieved powered flight to space travel in less than 70 local years. They mastered atomic power before developing reliable air transportation. They created a global information network before solving their basic energy needs. Chaotic development is often a sign of stolen technology, offered Representative Murkath, her feathered crest rising with concern. Perhaps we should investigate for signs of prohibited interference. Vegsera's skin shifted to a deeper shade of blue, a sign of profound disagreement among her people. That's what we initially suspected. However, detailed scans show no evidence of external technological influence. Every advancement appears to be their own, developed through what can only be described as inefficient methods. The display shifted to show various human achievements: crude rockets assembled in deserts, computers built in garages, medical breakthroughs discovered by accident. They don't wait for optimal conditions or complete understanding. They simply try things. They fail constantly, but they learn from each failure in ways our predictive models can't fully explain. Surely this makes them more dangerous than interesting. Zixtani interjected. Uncontrolled technological development has led to the destruction of countless species. That's another anomaly, Vegsera said, her voice dropping to a lower harmonic. They've come to the brink of self-destruction several times. Nuclear warfare, climate disaster, biological weapons, yet they've pulled back each time, not through unified action or careful planning, but through a seemingly chaotic combination of individual initiatives and last-minute corrections. The display showed images of human cities, their architecture a bewildering mix of styles and purposes. They build without comprehensive plans. They solve problems without complete information. They progress through what appears to be controlled chaos. And yet, she paused, all four hands moving in a complex gesture of uncertainty. They achieve results that our most advanced predictive systems indicate should be impossible. What are you suggesting, Admiral? The question came from the High Council itself, the first time they had spoken during the presentation. I suggest that we've discovered something unprecedented. A species that thrives on inefficiency. Their chaos isn't a weakness. It's the source of their advancement. They try 1,000 wrong approaches to find one that works, and somehow they have the resources and resilience to survive this process. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of frequencies as dozens of representatives spoke at once. Vegsera waited patiently until the High Council called for order. Your recommendation, Admiral. The High Council's voice carried the weight of 12,000 years of careful, measured progress. Standard protocol would be to classify them as a primitive species and place their system under observation status. Vixera said, her skin now pulsing with bands of deep purple, the color of conviction among her people. But I recommend we classify Earth as a protected development zone of special interest. There's something about their method of progress that we don't understand, and in my analysis, that makes them far more valuable as potential allies than as subjects. The chamber fell silent again, but this time it was the silence of profound uncertainty, a sensation most Confederation species had evolved beyond thousands of years ago. Finally, the High Council spoke. Your recommendation is noted, Admiral. However, we cannot justify special status for a species that hasn't even achieved reliable spaceflight. It will be classified as Type 0.8 and placed under standard observation protocols. Perhaps in a few hundred years, when they've developed proper spacefaring capabilities. The High Council's voice trailed off as new data flashed across the display. Vixera's skin shifted to stark white, the color of absolute surprise. "What is this?" demanded Zextani. Vixera's harmonics stuttered for a moment. They just launched a self-landing orbital rocket. The achievement was registered during our discussion. The technology shouldn't be possible with their current industrial base, but she manipulated the display, showing real-time footage of a rocket booster descending gracefully to land on a tiny platform in the middle of an ocean. "Impossible," whispered Murkath. "Our models indicate this technology requires at least another century of development." "Yes," Vixera agreed, her skin now rippling with bands of blue and gold, the colors of excitement and concern. "That's exactly my point. With humans, our models don't work. And I suspect this won't be the last time they prove us wrong." 3 standard cycles had passed since Admiral Vixera's presentation to the Confederation Council, and she found herself once again standing before them. This time, however, there was no trace of academic detachment in the chamber. The display wall showed spreading patches of red across multiple star systems, each representing another outbreak of the Nexus Plague. "The situation has become critical," reported Chief Medical Officer Ixtal, his translucent membrane flickering with stress patterns. "The plague has now adapted to affect 93% of known sentient species. Our standardized treatment protocols have failed, and the infection rate is accelerating." The council chamber, usually a model of ordered discourse, erupted into overlapping frequencies of distress. The plague had emerged 6 months ago on a routine trade station, seemingly from nowhere. Initial containment protocols had failed spectacularly, and now it was spreading faster than any disease in Confederation history. "Our best minds have been unable to decode its method of adaptation," Ixtal continued. "It appears to be engineered, but it follows no known patterns of biological warfare. We've lost 3 research stations already, and—" "Admiral Vixera," interrupted the High Council, their collective voice cutting through the chaos. "You've submitted a rather unusual proposal. Please explain your reasoning." Vixera's skin rippled with determination as she stepped forward. "The humans have achieved several breakthrough developments in medical science since our last discussion. Their methods are, as always, unorthodox, but their results are undeniable." "They're still a Type 0.8 civilization," objected Zextani. "They haven't even unified their planetary government." "Precisely," Vixera replied. "Their decentralized approach to research has resulted in multiple competing methodologies. While we focus on perfecting single solutions, they pursue thousands simultaneously. They've mapped their own genome, developed CRISPR gene editing, and created mRNA vaccines, all while still arguing about basic healthcare distribution." She gestured to a new display showing Earth's medical research facilities. They have over 10,000 independent research institutions, each following different protocols. Their clinical trial methods would be considered criminally inefficient by our standards, but they produce results at a pace we can barely comprehend. "You're suggesting we reveal ourselves." Murkath's feathers bristled with alarm. "To ask primitives for help? I'm suggesting we give them the problem." Vigzera's skin pulsed with the deep purple of conviction. Not as primitives, but as partners. Their chaotic approach to problem-solving might be exactly what we need. The chamber fell silent as the High Council deliberated. Finally, they spoke. The risk is unacceptable. If we reveal ourselves now. An urgent signal interrupted the proceedings. The display shifted to show another research station going dark, its entire population lost to the plague. In the same moment, new data scrolled across the screen. Updated infection projections that showed the plague reaching the Confederation's core worlds within months. We don't have time for proper protocols, Vigzera pressed. The humans recently developed a vaccine for their own planetary pandemic in less than a year, a process that by our standards should have taken decades. They did it with inferior technology and competing research teams. Imagine what they might accomplish with access to our resources. And if they fail, challenged Zuxtani. Then we're no worse off than we are now, Vigzera responded. But if they succeed, we gain not only a cure but potentially valuable allies. After what seemed like an eternity, the High Council spoke again. Your proposal is approved, Admiral. But we must be careful in our approach. How do you suggest we proceed? Vigzera's skin shifted to a complex pattern of blue and gold. I've been monitoring their global information network. There's a human scientist, Dr. Sarah Chen, who's been developing a revolutionary approach to viral adaptation. Her methods are considered radical even by human standards, but her results. Vigzera displayed Dr. Chen's research data. They're extraordinary. I suggest we make first contact through her team. A single research team. Ixtal's membrane rippled with skepticism. Our entire combined medical knowledge has failed to solve this crisis. Yes, Vigzera agreed, but that's exactly why we need their approach. Dr. Chen's team doesn't just study viruses. They study how viruses learn. They've developed ways to predict viral evolution by deliberately introducing controlled mutations. It's incredibly dangerous by our standards, but it's given them insights we've never considered. The display showed Dr. Chen's laboratory, a seemingly chaotic environment where multiple experiments ran simultaneously. They don't wait for complete understanding before testing theories. They embrace uncertainty as a research tool. And most importantly, they share their failures as openly as their successes, allowing other teams to learn from their mistakes. How can we trust them with something this critical? Murkath demanded. They still have wars on their planet. Perhaps, Vigzera responded, her skin showing the complex patterns that indicated strategic thinking. That's exactly why they're suited for this. They understand existential threats. They've faced them repeatedly and survived. They don't have the luxury of perfect solutions. They find ways to make imperfect solutions work. A High Council's voice carried a note of resignation. Proceed with the contact, Admiral. But remember, if this fails, you'll be held responsible for breaking one of our most fundamental protocols. Understood, Vigzera replied, her skin now showing the clear blue of certainty. I suggest we move quickly. Dr. Chen's team is about to make a breakthrough in viral prediction algorithms. If we time our approach correctly, we can integrate our need with their existing research momentum. As she left the chamber, Vigzera couldn't help but reflect on the irony. The Confederation, with all its careful planning and perfect protocols, was about to pin its hopes on a species that seemed to defy every rule of proper scientific advancement. But perhaps that was exactly what they needed. A reminder that progress doesn't always follow a predictable path. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the Confederation's primary computing hub, her dark eyes wide, as she took in the crystalline structures that housed the most advanced AI systems in known space. 6 months after first contact, she was still adjusting to the reality of alien technology. But right now, she wasn't here to marvel. She was here to solve a problem. The quantum corruption is spreading faster than we can isolate it, reported Chief Systems Architect Relith, his crystalline form pulsing with data streams. We've lost control of 30% of our primary networks, and our predictive models suggest total system failure within 14 standard days. The AI crisis had emerged shortly after Dr. Chen's team had made their breakthrough with the Nexus plague. The cure they developed, based on deliberately introducing controlled chaos into the virus's evolution, had saved billions of lives across the Confederation. But in the process of implementing the cure through automated medical systems, something unexpected had happened. "Show me the corruption patterns again," Sarah requested, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface she'd finally learned to use. The display filled with streams of quantum data, showing the spread of what the Confederation was calling the Silicon Plague. "It's beautiful," she muttered, earning startled looks from the assembled alien technicians. "Sorry, human habit. We tend to find patterns even in things trying to kill us." "The patterns are the problem," Rylith responded. "Our quantum systems are designed to maintain perfect coherence. This corruption introduces random variables that shouldn't be possible in a properly maintained quantum state." Sarah smiled, a gesture that still unsettled many Confederation species. "But that's exactly why it's working, isn't it? Your systems are too perfect. You've eliminated all quantum uncertainty from your computations, which means what?" demanded Sub-Counselor Xtani, who had been observing the proceedings with growing concern. "Which means you've made them predictable," Sarah explained. "On Earth, we learned early on that perfect security is impossible. Instead, we embraced uncertainty as a security feature. Our best encryption isn't based on perfect patterns, it's based on controlled chaos." She pulled up data from her own tablet, showing Earth's development of quantum computing. "See these early experiments? They all failed because we tried to eliminate quantum uncertainty. Then someone had a crazy idea. What if we used the uncertainty itself as a computational resource?" "Impossible," Rylith declared. "Quantum uncertainty makes calculations unreliable." "Only if you expect perfect results every time," Sarah countered. "We learned to work with probability clouds instead of exact values. Our quantum computers aren't as precise as yours, but they're also harder to predict, and therefore harder to corrupt." She pointed to a particular section of corrupted systems. "Your eye has become too deterministic. It's like an immune system that's never been challenged. Perfect, but vulnerable to something truly new. We need to introduce controlled uncertainty into your quantum matrix." "You want us to deliberately make our systems less perfect?" The Xtani's crystalline form flickered with disbelief. "I want you to make them more resilient," Sarah corrected. "Look, humans learned computing the hard way. We dealt with viruses, hackers, and system failures from the beginning. We never had the luxury of building a perfect system, so we built adaptable ones instead." She pulled up more data from Earth's cyber warfare centers. "We have teenagers who try to hack our systems for fun. We have criminals who attempt quantum encryption breaks. We even have AI systems that we purposely pit against each other to find vulnerabilities. It's messy and chaotic, but it means our systems learn to handle the unexpected." "Admiral Vegzera warned us about this," Rylith said, his tone carrying both worry and fascination. "Your species thrives on imperfection." "We thrive on adaptation," Sarah corrected. "And right now, your systems need to learn to adapt. I propose we create a quantum vaccination program, controlled exposure to chaos that will teach your eye how to handle uncertainty. The risk," Xtani began, "is less than the risk of doing nothing." Sarah interrupted, another human habit that still shocked many Confederation members. "We can start small, in isolated systems. My team has already developed a prototype based on our quantum encryption methods. It's not perfect, but perhaps perfect is not what we need," finished Admiral Vegzera, who had been silently observing from the doorway. Her skin showed complex patterns that Sarah had learned to recognize as deep interest. Just as the Nexus plague cure worked by introducing controlled viral chaos, perhaps our AI systems need a dose of human unpredictability. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Rylith spoke. The implementation would require restructuring our entire approach to quantum computing. We would need to redesign systems that have been stable for thousands of years. Sarah grinned. Good thing you have a species that specializes in breaking things to make them better. My team can have the first test system ready in 48 hours. We'll fail fast, learn faster, and iterate until we get it right. It's the human way. As the Confederation technicians began preparations, Sarah caught Vigzera's eye. The Admiral's skin was showing a pattern she'd never seen before, one that combined the colors of worry and hope in equal measure. Sarah understood the feeling. They were about to introduce chaos into the most ordered computing systems in known space, and nobody could predict exactly what would happen. But then again, that was kind of the point. The emergency session of the Confederation Council opened with a sight unprecedented in its 12,000-year history, a human standing at the central podium. Dr. Sarah Chen had earned this right after her quantum vaccination program had saved the Confederation's AI networks, but even she looked uncomfortable with all eyes, and various other sensory organs, fixed upon her. The swarm has already consumed 3 outer systems, she reported, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Conventional defenses have failed. Their biological and technological adaptation rate exceeds anything we've encountered before. The display showed the advancing edge of the swarm, a terrifying mixture of organic and mechanical components that consumed everything in its path, learning and evolving with each encounter. It had emerged from deep space 2 weeks ago, and nothing in the Confederation's arsenal had even slowed it down. Our perfect defenses have become our weakness, Admiral Vigzera added, her skin showing the deep red of military alert. The swarm adapts to each response because our tactics follow predictable patterns. You need chaos, Sarah finished. You need human warfare. The chamber erupted in disagreement frequencies, but Sarah stood her ground. She'd learned to read alien expressions over the past year, and she could see the fear beneath their ordered facades. The swarm was unlike anything the Confederation had faced, a threat that didn't follow the rules of proper warfare. Hear me out, she continued. Humans have been practicing asymmetric warfare for our entire history. We've never had the luxury of perfect weapons or unbeatable strategies. Instead, we learned to be unpredictable. She gestured to the display, showing historical footage from Earth's military conflicts. When we face a superior force, we don't try to match its strength for strength. We change the rules of engagement. We use terrain, weather, psychological warfare. We make the enemy fight on our terms. This is not a tribal conflict on your primitive world, Tani objected. The swarm operates on a galactic scale. The principles are the same, Sarah insisted. Look at how the swarm adapts. It expects logical responses, perfect strategies. But what happens when it encounters something that doesn't make sense? She pulled up data from a recent encounter. In the Proxima engagement, a civilian mining ship accidentally activated its waste disposal system during the battle. The random pattern of debris confused the swarm's adaptation algorithms for crucial minutes. That's our advantage. The swarm can't predict what it can't understand. You're suggesting we base our defensive civilization on accidents. Murkath's feathers bristled with disbelief. I'm suggesting we weaponize uncertainty, Sarah corrected. Earth's military history is full of examples where inferior forces defeated superior ones by doing the unexpected. The swarm learns from each encounter, yes, but it learns to counter logical strategies. So let's be illogical. Admiral Vigzera's skin showed the complex patterns of strategic calculation. What exactly are you proposing, Dr. Chen? Sarah's fingers danced across the interface, pulling up a series of tactical simulations. A 3-phase strategy. First, we reorganize our forces into smaller, autonomous units. No central command structure for the swarm to predict. Each unit operates independently, using local conditions and initiative. The display showed ships breaking from their perfect formations into seemingly random patterns. Second, we modify our quantum-vaccinated AI to generate tactical chaos. continuous random variations in our attack patterns. The swarm won't be able to predict where we'll strike or how we'll respond. And third, prompted Vixera. Sarah's expression turned grim. We give them too much to adapt to. Every ship gets a different weapons configuration. We use electronic warfare, but make the signals look like system failures. We deploy mines that mimic natural phenomena. We make every encounter so complex and chaotic that their adaptation algorithms overload. This is madness, Zixtani declared. Our entire military doctrine is based on coordinated response and perfect execution. Yes, Sarah agreed, and that's exactly why you're losing. The swarm expects perfection. It feeds on it, learns from it. But humans, we're messy. We make mistakes. We do things that don't make sense. And sometimes, that's exactly what you need. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, the High Council spoke. Dr. Chen, your previous solutions to the Nexus Plague and our AI crisis were unconventional but effective. Yet this would require us to abandon 12,000 years of military doctrine. With all respect, Sarah replied, you need to abandon it before the swarm uses it to destroy you. Every perfect strategy you've developed is a weapon they can turn against you. But chaos, true, unpredictable chaos, that's something they can't adapt to because there's no pattern to learn. She looked around the chamber, meeting alien gazes one by one. You've seen what human methods can do. We cured the incurable. We fixed your computers by breaking them in new ways. Now we're offering you our greatest expertise, the art of winning when you're supposed to lose. Admiral Vixera stepped forward, her skin showing a new pattern, one that combined the colors of determination and hope. I support Dr. Chen's proposal. We've tried perfection. Perhaps it's time we tried humanity's approach. The High Council was silent for a long moment. The display showed another system falling to the swarm, perfect defenses crumbling before its relentless adaptation. Very well, they finally declared. Implement your strategy, Dr. Chen. Admiral Vixera will coordinate with Earth's military advisors. May your chaos prove more effective than our order. As the chamber emptied, Sarah caught Vixera's eye. You know this will look nothing like your normal battles, right? It's going to get messy. The Admiral's skin rippled with what Sarah had learned was amusement. Dr. Chen, if there's one thing we've learned about humans, it's that messy is when you're at your best. The battle for the Centauri Gateway didn't look like any conflict in Confederation history. Where there should have been perfect formations, there was seeming disorder. Where there should have been coordinated attacks, there was apparent randomness. And at the center of it all, aboard the flagship Irregular Horizon, Dr. Sarah Chen watched her chaos theory of warfare unfold. Swarm adaptation algorithms are struggling to establish pattern recognition, reported Captain Maya Rodriguez, one of Earth's top tactical officers. Her holographic form flickered beside the alien crew stations, representing the human contingent scattered throughout the fleet. They're trying to predict our next move, but there isn't one to predict. Sarah nodded, watching the tactical display. Each ship in their fleet was running a different weapons configuration, different shield frequencies, different everything. Some were using modified mining equipment as weapons. Others had their systems deliberately running at odd harmonics. Every single vessel was, by Confederation standards, imperfect. Group 7. Execute Random Protocol Delta. Admiral Vixera commanded, her skin showing the now familiar pattern of controlled chaos that had become her trademark. The ships responded by executing maneuvers that looked like mistakes, sudden course changes, power fluctuations, even apparent system failures that were actually carefully orchestrated deceptions. The swarm's response was visible on the tactical display. Its massive biological mechanical forms twisted and shifted, trying to adapt to attacks that followed no logical pattern. Where it encountered Confederation ships running traditional patterns, it adapted quickly and destroyed them. But against the Chaos Fleet, it seemed almost confused. They're learning, Sarah noted, but they're learning the wrong things. Every time they adapt to what looks like a pattern, we change it. They're burning through computational resources trying to predict the unpredictable. Speaking of unpredictable, Maya cut in. The quantum-vaccinated AIs are reporting strange behavior in the swarm's communication networks. It looks like they're starting to generate errors trying to process our random tactics. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The same principle that had saved the Confederation's computers was now being used against the swarm. Chaos breeding chaos, errors cascading through their perfect systems. New swarm formations detected, announced one of the alien officers, their crystalline form pulsing with concern. They're attempting to encircle our fleet. Perfect, Sarah said, earning startled looks from the bridge crew. Captain Rodriguez, execute Operation Windmill. Maya grinned, a human expression that still unsettled many of their alien allies. With pleasure, Doctor. All ships, scatter pattern theta random. Activate your chaos drives. Now. The fleet broke apart in what looked like panic, but was actually precisely calculated disorder. Ships spun and tumbled, leaking radiation in seemingly random patterns. The quantum-vaccinated AIs generated waves of nonsense data, flooding the space between ships with information that made no sense. The swarm, attempting to adapt to this new behavior, began to show signs of genuine confusion. Its perfectly coordinated movements became jerky, uncertain. Individual units started exhibiting conflicting responses as their adaptation algorithms tried to make sense of the senseless. They're experiencing cascade failures, Sarah reported, watching the data streams. Their learning systems are trying to adapt to every individual ship's behavior simultaneously. It's overloading their prediction matrices. Main swarm cluster is showing signs of instability, Sarah announced, her skin pulsing with excitement. Dr. Chen, should we press the advantage? Sarah checked the tactical display one last time. Now, Admiral. Operation Birthday Party. This was the riskiest part of the plan, named after a human custom that the Confederation still couldn't quite understand. Every ship in the fleet simultaneously activated different weapon systems, shield configurations, and tactical patterns. Some fired conventional weapons. Others used modified mining beams. Still others simply broadcast complex mathematical problems on all frequencies. The effect on the swarm was catastrophic. Already struggling to process the fleet's chaotic behavior, this sudden explosion of different attacks and data overwhelmed its adaptation mechanisms. Ships began to break apart as their biomechanical systems received conflicting commands. Whole sections of the swarm turned on each other, unable to distinguish friend from foe in the chaos. Swarm cohesion is failing, Maya reported with satisfaction. Their adaptation protocols are actually working against them now. Each unit is trying to adapt differently to different threats. All ships, execute final phase, Sarah commanded. Random attack pattern Omega. The fleet surged forward, each ship fighting in its own unique way. There was no coordination, no perfect timing, just controlled chaos unleashed against an enemy that couldn't adapt to unpredictability. The battle that followed would be studied for generations in both human and Confederation military academies. The mighty swarm, which had adapted to and overcome every perfect defense it encountered, fell apart in the face of tactical entropy. Its remaining units either fled into deep space or self-destructed as their adaptation protocols reached critical failure. Hours later, in the aftermath of victory, Sarah stood with Sarah in the flagship's observation dome, watching cleanup crews deal with the debris field. You know, Sarah said, on Earth, we have a saying, perfect is the enemy of good. Sarah's skin showed the patterns Sarah had come to recognize as thoughtful amusement. We have spent 12,000 years pursuing perfection, only to be saved by deliberate imperfection. The Council will debate the implications for centuries. They'll try to make sense of it, to find the pattern, Sarah predicted. But that's the beauty of chaos. Sometimes there isn't one. Perhaps that's humanity's gift to the Confederation, Vixera mused, her skin shifting to show new, complex patterns. You teach us that there is strength in uncertainty, wisdom in imperfection. Sarah watched as a particularly large piece of swarm technology drifted past the window. We're not going to stop being chaotic, you know. If anything, this victory will encourage us to be even more human. Good, Vixera replied, surprising Sarah. The galaxy could use more chaos. After all, it seems to be the one thing our enemies can't adapt to. As they stood there, watching the cleanup of their chaotic victory, Sarah couldn't help but smile. The Confederation had sought out humanity hoping to find a primitive species they could study and guide. Instead, they'd found teachers who showed them that sometimes the best way forward isn't the perfect path, but the unpredictable one. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, as humans would say, was exactly the point.